In this world, being without a partner is forbidden by law. Those who are single are sent to a hotel where they are given 45 days to find a suitable mate, someone with a shared trait or commonality. If they fail to find their soulmate within this time, they will be transformed into an animal of their choice. The only way to extend their stay in the hotel is by hunting down other singles who are hiding in the woods. Self-pleasure is strictly prohibited in this society. However, maids come daily to entertain the guests in their own way. The story begins with a woman driving down a desolate road, her destination a field where two small donkeys graze. And without hesitation, she shoots one of the donkeys. The scene transitions to our protagonist, David, arriving at the hotel with his dog. The dog, once his brother, had chosen to be transformed after failing to find a partner. After a receptionist woman explains him the rules of the hotel, David approaches the hotel manager and expresses his desire to be turned into a lobster, citing their long lifespan of up to 100 years. At breakfast, David's attention is drawn to three women: the heartless woman, known for her total lack of emotion; the biscuit woman, always carrying a small pack of biscuits; and the nosebleed woman, whose constant nosebleeds seem to follow her everywhere. His gaze shifts to two men nearby: Robert, who speaks with a lisp, and John, who walks with a noticeable limp. Later, during a group assembly, John is called up to speak. He recounts how his father left his mother for another woman, and in response, his mother was transformed into a wolf and placed in a zoo. John recalls visiting her enclosure, and in a moment of desperation, he climbed inside to hug her. The other wolves attacked, leaving him with a limp, but two wolves remained motionless. John believed one of them was his mother. Soon after, all the singles gather for a dance, an opportunity to meet potential partners. They're also given the chance to extend their stay by hunting down loners in the woods and tranquilizing them. The heartless woman is known as the most skilled hunter, her cold, unfeeling nature making her an expert at tracking and capturing. Most of the other guests have no qualms about hunting the outcasts, but David can't bring himself to do it. As a result, when the hunt ends, he doesn't earn any extra days. Time begins to fly by, and David gradually adjusts to the hotel's strict routine. Guests are required to watch a series of propaganda demonstrations, touting the supposed advantages of relationships with absurd examples: single people choking on their food without a partner to assist them, or women being abused in the absence of a man to protect them. A maid comes to David's room regularly to sit on his lap and stimulate him until he's hard, which is an activity David doesn't really enjoy, because they aren't allowed to finish, so he just considers it a torture. The hotel manager finds out that Robert was touching himself repeatedly, and she forces him to have his fingers burnt in a toaster as punishment. Meanwhile, John begins to pursue the nosebleed woman by intentionally slamming his face against a table, pretending to have a nosebleed as well. This helps him establish a connection with her. Later, David asks John if it's wise to lie, but John explains that being hunted in the forest or transformed into an animal would be far worse. David, understanding his reasoning, supports him. The plan succeeds. John and the nosebleed woman are accepted as a couple and move to a larger room. With only 7 days left, David strikes up a conversation with a blonde woman on her final day, but she wants to be turned into a pony. Her best friend, the nosebleed woman, comes to bid her farewell, reading a heartfelt letter to her, but the blonde woman's only response is to slap her, then chooses to watch a movie for her last human activity. Later, David looks out the window and is shocked to see that the blonde woman has been transformed into a pony. Soon after, the biscuit woman jumps from her window, falling to the ground below. David watches, realizing that John was right. It's better to lie than risk being turned into an animal, so he decides to pretend he doesn't have feelings. He approaches the heartless woman and coldly remarks that the biscuit woman is better off gone. At first she ignores him and he walks away, but later David follows her to the jacuzzi. There, the heartless woman pretends to choke on an olive from her martini. David stays calm, playing it cool as if he couldn't care less. After a brief moment, she looks at him with a nod of approval. She thinks they're a good match. The hotel manager announces that they're now a couple. They give them the key to a double room, where they'll stay for the next 15 days before being sent on a yacht trip. The rules are clear. They must always remain together, and David must continue pretending to be as indifferent as she is. They run into John and the nosebleed woman, who are accompanied by a young girl, assigned to be their daughter by the government. Without a second thought, David kicks the girl in the leg, so she can have a limp like her father. They begin spending time together, but much of it feels uncomfortable. The heartless woman refuses to cuddle with David when they go to bed. Morning, David is abruptly awakened by the heartless woman, who bluntly informs him that she kicked his brother to death. At first, David pretends it doesn't matter, but as soon as he enters the bathroom, he breaks down, seeing the dog's body. Heartless woman finds him crying and slaps him for lying, revealing she has kicked Dog on purpose because she had been suspicious of his plan. She decides to inform the hotel manager, ensuring David will be turned into an animal that no one would ever want to become. As she drags him through the hotel hallways, David takes the opportunity to strike her and flee. She quickly begins chasing him, but a maid misdirects her and David steps out of the room with a tranquilizer gun and shoots her in the back. With the maid's help, he drags her unconscious body away. Maid tells him to shot her as well so they won't suspect her. David does so before taking the heartless woman into the transformation room to be turned into an unknown animal. Afterwards, David escapes the hotel and ventures into the woods, where he encounters a group of loners, a rebel faction opposing the establishment. The leader of the loners greets David warmly, but warns him that any romantic interaction is strictly forbidden and punishable by their rules. David's gaze falls on a man with bandages wrapped around his mouth. He's told that the man has received the red kiss, in which he had his lips cut off, along with another woman who suffered the same fate, and they were forced to kiss each other. The worst punishment is said to be the red intercourse, which one can only imagine as to how it goes. With the loners, David settles into a new routine deep in the woods. They train to run and hide from hunters, constantly on alert. The leader instructs them all to dig their own graves, a grim precaution in case the worst happens, like when one of the loners accidentally steps into a bear trap and is left to free himself. But David hasn't started on his own grave yet. His attention is focused on a girl who, like him, is short-sighted. He wins her over by catching and killing rabbits, and then cooking them in a way specific to her liking. One day, the hotel bus arrives to hunt them down. David is spotted by Robert, who is determined to capture him since he only has 2 days left. David, thinking quickly, claims they're best friends and that he thinks of him often. This distraction allows the short-sighted woman to stab Robert in the leg from behind. The short-sighted woman makes David promise he won't tell anyone about her help, and that he'll repay her later by hunting a rabbit for her. He agrees before taking Robert's clothes and guns. Elsewhere, the loners' leader meets with the hotel maid, who has secretly been working as an informant for the group all along. She hands over a gun and keys to the double rooms at the hotel. Meanwhile, the loners continue their weekly trips into the city, posing as couples. David is paired with the short-sighted woman. They visit a shopping mall, stocking up on supplies and enjoying a meal. Police officers are stationed around the area, ensuring no one is alone. Just as David nearly gets caught by one officer, the short-sighted woman steps in, kissing him passionately. The officer is convinced they're a couple, and they're able to avoid showing any marriage certificates. As they leave the mall, chatting casually, David learns that she too is short-sighted. Later, the leader takes them to visit her parents. The two must pretend to be co-workers in a happy relationship to keep her parents from questioning them. David's heartfelt speech about his happiness with the short-sighted woman feels so genuine that it easily convinces everyone. As they leave the city, the leader congratulates David on a job well done during his first day. That evening, the two bond over shared stories of their vision problems. She rubs his back with soothing balm, and the connection between them deepens as they grow closer. Later, the leader announces that they will sabotage the hotel's operations. Each loner is assigned a room to break into. Only David gets assigned a yacht. The group arrives at the hotel, and David quietly takes out one of the guards with a tranquilizer dart. Before effortlessly making off with the boat, he navigates the waters to the yacht where John and his new family are staying. David attempts to break up their relationship, accusing John of faking his nosebleeds. But neither John nor his family is willing to listen, and John kicks David out. Meanwhile, the loner leader enters the hotel manager's suite. She binds the manager to a chair, gun in hand, and points it at her husband. She asks them who should live and who should die, who could survive on their own. The husband, calm and collected, insists that he should be the one to survive, claiming he's used to being alone while his wife works. The leader hands him the gun and tells him to shoot his wife. But when the husband pulls the trigger, the gun clicks empty. It was all part of the plan, just a cruel twist to destroy their relationship. Later that night, the loners gather to celebrate. Everyone's dancing on his own. Soon after, the leader approaches David and tells him that he needs to dig his own grave, because no one else will do it for him when his time comes. The next day, David notices another loner, a man bringing a rabbit to the short-sighted woman. A wave of jealousy washes over him. He approaches her, telling her she doesn't need to accept rabbits from anyone else because he'll catch them for her. Later, he confronts the man, harassing him to find out if he's short-sighted too. When the man denies it, David grabs his face, insisting on checking for contact lenses. He finds none, but the jealousy lingers. As time passes, David and the short-sighted woman begin a secret relationship, breaking all sorts of rules. They dance alone together, share some kisses, and find intimacy in the city while still pretending to be a couple. They even develop a sign language, allowing them to communicate in front of the others without speaking. After a few weeks, they can hold entire conversations silently, a language all their own. When they visit the leader's parents again, Their acting becomes so real and intense that it begins to annoy the leader. She intervenes, stopping them from making out in front of her family. Their bond has deepened to the point where they've decided to escape the hotel next time the hunters arrive, making it look like they've been captured. But the leader catches wind of their plan when one of the loners brings her the short-sighted woman's diary. Furious, she pulls David away from the others and forces him to dig his own grave. Once David finishes digging and lies down to test it, the leader orders him to cover himself in dirt, including his face, so the dogs won't eat him. Meanwhile, she takes the short-sighted woman to the city, promising her an eye surgery. Despite her suspicions, the leader convinces her to go through with it. However, after the procedure, the doctors inform them that the surgery has failed. The short-sighted woman is now completely blind, just as the leader had paid the doctors to ensure. Furious, the blind woman begins to piece everything together. She confronts the leader, threatening her with a knife. But the leader cleverly puts another loner in front of her as a shield, acting as though it's her who's being attacked. She falls to the floor, making death noises as the other woman also does. A few hours later, the blind woman meets with David to finalize their escape plan. At first, she tries to hide her blindness, but David quickly realizes it. He reassures her that they'll figure it out together. From that point on, David begins asking her questions, finding other commonalities they share. When he asks for a kiss, she tells him they can't do that anymore, which upsets him. Feeling rejected, he storms off. After a few days without seeing each other, David returns, revealing he has a plan. The next morning, he sneaks up behind the leader, knocking her out. He ties her up and leaves her in his grave, where she is later discovered and devoured by wild dogs. In the meantime, David and the now blind woman change into nice clothes and make their escape. They hide as a bus full of hunters drives by, then make it safely to the city. They visit a restaurant, where David asks her to show him various parts of her body before requesting a fork and knife from the waiter. David then goes to the bathroom with a knife, where he gets ready to stab his own eyes, while blind woman awaits him at the table, and that's where the film ends. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video. Thanks for watching.